Marcus Miller. I'm the director here at the Gordon Snellgrove Gallery, as you all know. And we're happy to share this Treaty 6 territory with our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, and it's the homeland of Métis as well. I'm very happy to introduce Kyle Zurevinski.
Yeah.
I don't know why I get gummed up on that, but I have been practicing. Zurevinski.
You're not the only one.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. Kyle actually is one of those students who we're all so proud of, and we enjoy having because he's especially ambitious, and he's sort of doing things that we hope all our students do. He's doing, he's showing all over the place. He's not waiting for the phone call to ring, and he's getting out there. He's doing stuff. He's on boards. He's volunteering everywhere, and so that's just great. And so that means that you're just setting yourself up for when you graduate, you're already rolling, and so that's really so great, Kyle. Kyle's got his upcoming BFA thesis show coming up April 2nd to the 6th, and we don't have a title on that yet, Kyle. Are you
I'll announce it during the show.
Okay. The show at the Francis Morrison Library just came down, Vibes, and that was also a very impressive thing that you did, Kyle. And of course, he had an independent show, a solo show, last year, Still Space, here at the Gordon Snellgrove Gallery. He's been showing actually in group shows all over the place. He's in a touring show through AKA called Futures, and that's being run through the OSAC. That's great. Modern Works, he was in the Modern Works show, group show at Darrell Bell Gallery, featuring works from Eli Bornstein, Ali Norland. I think you're in that show as well, is that right? So, man, that's so great. That's so great. All together now at AKA. There's all kinds of shows at Void Gallery. Just the list goes on, and that's really, really wonderful. So his expected graduation is June 2018, coming up pretty soon. He's had lots of work experience. So you're currently working as a program guide at the Remy?
Sure am,
yeah. Yeah, great. Who's a curatorial assistant working with Michael Peterson at Nuit Blanche, curatorial administrative assistant at AKA Artist Run, and you've done a bunch of film work as well. You're the producer for Four in a Blanket website.
It's coming out.
The web series. That's coming up.
It's coming up, yeah.
Assistant director for White Lash, a short film. And there's some more here. He's also been, what I wanted to mention before I get down here is that he's been nominated he was a finalist in the Scotiabank New Generation Photography Award, and also a finalist for the AIMA?
Yeah,
AIMA?
I don't know.
AIMIA. It's actually a very prestigious award that's offered through the AGO and the IMA Foundation, I think. And so he's shortlisted for both of those. And here's to you.
All right, well, thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Joe and Marcus for setting this talk up. Never done one of these before, so go easy on me. My name's Kyle. I'm completing my BFA here at the University of Saskatchewan, and I'm primarily a photographer and visual artist, I guess, generally speaking, but I'm going to talk about my photography practice today. And yeah, I guess we'll get started. So many things I want to come across in terms of my work and things I want to talk about today are really broken out into three categories. There's just shape, color, and abstraction. They're kind of the three rules I follow in terms of anything I try to create, and everything I'm looking at, the way I see the world, and how I choose to capture it. Really everything that it comes down to me is how I can design something I've never seen before, and how I can present that to the viewer. I often think of myself as someone who never knew how to paint, someone who never knew how to draw, though I've tried many times, so I've used the lens as my brush of sorts. Just some simple things of shape, color, and abstraction to get you an idea of kind of what my work kind of looks like and how it follows and how some of the themes follow through and have evolved, and how that kind of creeps into my own practice. This is some research work I've been doing over the past little while that will creep into my BFA show, but I will kind of start from the beginning, so to speak, kind of start from my university career, end of high school, I suppose, and kind of come up to where I am now and where the show will be heading shortly in a couple weeks here. Yeah. So, what feels like forever ago, in 2012, I came to the University of Saskatchewan, to the College of Arts and Science, with no real direction at all is what I wanted to do. I almost had no interests, to be honest. It was really kind of a blank slate. I took a little bit of everything from political studies to art history, really. And, I eventually wanted to go through a tech route. I was thinking of doing interactive system design for a number of years. And as well, much as I enjoyed the art aspect and design aspect of that course, at the end of the day, I just couldn't sit at a computer and write code all night. It wasn't for me. It just didn't fit in. I kind of convinced myself that maybe it was, but at the end of the day, what really stuck to me was photography and creating and being a content creator. So when it came to photography, the two things that have always really stuck with me that kind of got me into photography was these toy cameras, these kind of simple, simply manufactured and produced cameras run by lomography and the Fujifilm Instax cameras. I'm such a millennial that I can't even really get access to good Polaroids, like good Polaroid film and good Polaroid cameras are too far expensive for me to use on a regular basis. So luckily I was introduced to the Fujifilm line of cameras, and I really got into using that instant film and how I can kind of push the boundaries of it and how it could, kind of grow with it and what I could use it for. And so these are the two cameras I thought I'd post because they're actually quite childlike in a way, in the way they're shaped and the design, but at the same time, they really provide some really interesting results, and they even have really strong communities behind them. That's what I really always liked about Lomography, which is the fisheye camera on the left there, the company that produces that camera. They have such a great online community. You can talk to people who are taking interesting shots and having happy accidents and how that's kind of going into their work, and maybe it starts a whole new practice for them. And so in high school I got really into using those cameras and kind of just seeing how easy it was to use, but how I was getting something I could never really even begin to imagine how to use on just a regular SLR because I wasn't properly trained at all, but I was having these wonderful accidents happening and I was learning little things from the internet. And so that kind of led right into what would be my first art studio art class I took at the university. As much as I said I was a blank slate, the only class I knew I wanted to take no matter what was the photography course, the 100 level photography course offered here. And so I logged on like 7 a.m. whatever it was that morning, and I believe got like 7:01 the class was full. Like I couldn't get in, and I was almost like dying. I was like, oh god, what am I going to do? Like the only thing I really wanted to do, like do I even go to school? Like a little bit of a life crisis of some regard. But I kid you not, I stayed on the computer for probably an hour and a half, just refreshing constantly, and then eventually one class opened up and I got in, and that was that. I was persistent, I suppose. And so when I was given the opportunity to do a kind of an independent project, this would have been for the second year photography class, I went straight to the instant film. When I was told I needed to do a landscape assignment, I kind of like threw that out of my brain and I said, well, how can I do that with the instant film? Because I wanted to do something that I felt like I hadn't seen before. But I quickly learned that I wasn't really learning enough. I was learning a lot from my art history classes, but I wasn't going above and beyond to see what other people were doing in photography and in the modern landscape. So I came to my professor, Jennifer Crane, and I showed her this, and I was very excited about this. I thought it was something very original, very my own, and I told her, like, look at this. I don't know if anyone's ever done this before. This is so interesting. And then she sat me down on her computer and she's like, let me show you David Hockney. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough, lesson learned, like, that's great. So I really was inspired by Hockney, clearly, I guess maybe subconsciously, I don't know. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed the aspect of time and the physicality that the Polaroid or instant film in general possesses and how that can be used in different ways. And I think a lot of it is interesting too, because as any artist, there's always certain materials or colors that you like to play with, and I think in photography that comes out very strongly. And Hawking's a great example of this, because you can look at his paintings and his other works, and it's Hawking. But then you look at his photographs, and as well. You can look at the pool there, and you get that right away. You can see that he went there and he painted each one of those lines, and that's him. Moving on a little forward, one thing that's always been another part of my life, as Marcus mentioned, is film. Film has been something that's always inspired me, always really directly contributed to something that I'm interested in, whether it's just an actor, a score, the way the film looks. But one film in particular is this film in 2013 called Under the Skin, starring Scarlett Johansson kind of hidden there. And it's just this beautiful and somewhat haunting film that really showed interesting objects in different light. And it took the time to show things into a different perspective and kind of flip the script on, I guess, traditional filmmaking. And it blew my mind, in all honesty, and from that point on, I honestly think I saw photography in a different way, and I saw images in a different way. And so when I wanted to continue using the instant film, I took kind of the framing and the overall aesthetics of this film, and it inspired me very greatly for my next work, which was this series called Instantaneous, which was greatly helped by this fantastic little printer of mine that prints from your phone onto the instant film. So it gave me incredible control in terms of how I could break up each and every image there. Each image is broken up into 8 separate images, and then they're printed and stitched together by hand, and then I had them displayed in the Snellgrove here for a group show. They were just 9 physical objects, and these are obviously scanned for you guys to be viewing, but I had a lot of fun creating this, and I really felt that I could, for the first time, see myself grow as an artist and see myself grow in terms of a thinker, really, how I was thinking ideas through and how I was developing them over time and where that was going. And I was really fond of this work. But then as everything kind of changed, I started looking at the work of Mark Rothko, because I loved the lines and kind of the minimalism of sorts that I was working with in some of these images. And I wanted to see that through. I wanted to work on that. I wanted to expand onto that. And when I was looking at Rothko, that to me just felt like so much emotion. He was saying so much with what some would figure to be so little. And I thought, like, how could I do that? Again, like, I'm not a painter. Like, I'm just not good at it. I can't sit with the canvas. I can't create that. How can I see these colors myself? How can I emulate that in my own work with it still being myself? And so I created this, this one piece called Slab here that really focused on shadow and color and kind of texture to a degree, but also displaying it to the viewer in a way that was confusing and abstract. And that's where color and shape kind of evolved into abstraction for me. And I wanted to really explore that. And essentially what here is the same image twice, one just being flipped and reversed, but also creating its own kind of atmosphere and its own presentation of what it is. And I could tell right away that after producing this work that things were going to kind of change for how I was going to be seeing things. I was stripping down how I was doing everything, and it was going to be hard for me to kind of build back up, because I wanted to just break down photography to its finest elements of sorts. And I guess I'll talk about that a little bit later. One thing I will mention, though, Marcus was mentioning some opportunities that I've been fortunate to have, but a lot of that is just being, just reading the paper, reading what's online, what's around, what kind of things can you enter, what kind of things can you be a part of. One of that was Tunes on Transit, which is a local mobile touring art gallery of sorts that actually is featured in the buses for the public transit. It's put on by Paved Arts. I am a board member of Paved Arts, so full disclosure, but I figured I'd give a little blurb on them while I'm here. Be a good board member for a day. But in all honesty, it was a really great opportunity, because it was a chance for me to submit an image, have it juried, have it selected, get a little bit of money for it, the first time I ever got money for being an artist or taking a photograph, and then have it presented for essentially the whole city to see in a way. You can hop on the bus and you can take a look at the photo. And I got a lot of joy out of that, and I highly recommend Paved as establishment for anyone who here is an artist or a creator. It's a great environment to get some of your ideas out. They're an artist run and also have facilities for tech gear, cameras, lots of stuff. If you want to know more, you can ask me later. But yeah, I mentioned that though because it really kind of fulfilled some ideas about what being an artist was to my mind. At this point, I hadn't really considered myself an artist and all. I just felt like I was a student in an arts class, and I took that photo for an assignment, really enjoyed it, but then as soon as someone else besides my professor enjoyed it, it kind of opened up something else for me, thinking to myself, oh, I should be sharing these ideas with other people and I should be expanding upon it. So I was coming into what would actually be my 4th year at this point, and I was looking at previous work, these kind of being my 2 favorites up until this point, or not necessarily even favorite, just the ideas that I was interested in were best presented through these works, and I wanted to expand on them, but also I wanted to figure out where I could go, and I kind of combined these 2 ideas together in a way for what would be my next series, which I called Vibes, which were essentially these almost abstract paintings taken with the lens and printed onto the instant film and then scanned for larger consumption, I guess. And the kind of thought process behind this work a lot is also using old and new technologies with one another. I was using an instant film, although maybe not as old as a Polaroid film, an older, almost archaic technology to some people's understanding with what would actually be a mobile phone. I would take the image on my mobile phone, I would use technology and apps to edit them, and then I would print it onto the film, have that physical object, scan it to another digital file, and then print it onto another physical piece. So I was really kind of going back and forth with these ideas of technology and how we view images, how images are consumed, and what kind of happens throughout that process, what kind of results occur, what are we saying about these elements and these themes. And I recently had this work shown in the Francis Morrison Library Gallery. It was very kind of me, for kind of them to have me show their work there. Yeah, and it was great space, very fitting to have it. I showed the series of 9 images printed, and then also I had the 9 instant images on the back wall there. Yeah, the lighting in there wasn't too great, so you can't see the instant images that great, but yeah, so I was fortunate to have the space, and up until this point I really enjoyed this work, and I thought it, to be honest, probably was my best work, but I didn't know how to expand upon it or where to go next. I felt like I was really going up the next flight of stairs kind of thing up until this point, but I was kind of stuck. I didn't know where to go, so I kind of went back to film and looked at things that were inspiring me, and more so in terms of visuals. I've never really believed in the idea that like visuals aren't substantial in terms of film. I think that visuals can be substance, and I don't think that doesn't mean that films like Spring Breakers and Demon are perfect films, but I think their visuals and their visual elements make them great films. I highly recommend Spring Breakers. It's actually a film that gets a lot of hate from just how it was promoted and how people maybe have got a first impression of it, but I think it's like a brilliant piece of work. I've written papers on it. If you want to talk more about it, let me know. I love it. As well as The Neon Demon by Nicholas Winding Refn. Again, looking at visuals as a form of substance, as visual storytelling, and how that can really elicit an emotion. Because looking at works like this, I wanted to convey emotion the way Rothko did. I wanted to kind of elicit a vibe, more or less. That's kind of where the title comes from. And I wanted to kind of allow the viewer to have their own individual experience without having specific meaning behind it, which I think abstraction, often comes from. But moving on to something like this, I was looking at the color palette specifically and how these kind of audacious neon color palettes were really whimsical but also kind of terrifying, and were really kind of like the upside down or sorts of like what real life is, and how it was absurd in its natural sense. And so I began over the summer kind of doing some research, and I produced a small series called Codeine Dream that was looking at the colors from films like that and other neon works and other kind of pink and purpley pastel works that other artists were doing, and emulating that in my own sense and trying to expand upon that and really view things around me, how I can present them in my own way. Which how could I manipulate this corner? How could the colors in here elicit an emotion? And I guess manipulation is something else I would like to mention. I mentioned briefly here talking about this work slab and how I was manipulating the orientation of the image to kind of create a new space. And I figured that this might be a good place to keep researching and keep expanding upon. I felt like there was an opportunity to keep working in this kind of aspect ratio and also the orientation, how it's displayed. So that came to my work Still Space, which was proudly shown here at the Gordon Snellgrove Gallery last May. And I kind of wanted to play with an idea of duality, working with these audacious colors and these absurd neon spaces with kind of dull and still environments. And again, manipulating images to create new spaces and to, I guess, essentially create atmosphere and put the viewer into a viewing experience, or I want to say a cityscape, that's not quite right, an experience that they're not familiar with, but yet there's images and glances within the image that they are familiar with. So the familiarity really poses as a challenge, but I like that. I like when someone uses an image from this series and doesn't know what they're looking at, and they ask me, where is this, what is that? And at first I'm kind of like, begrudgingly apprehensive to tell them, but eventually when they find out, they say, oh, okay, I get it, and then they kind of see what the process was. And that's why I really enjoy showing this work here, when I could actually show the instant image. Because when people were just viewing the prints, they were curious about many things, like what's the border about, and what are these images, where are they from? But when they saw the instant film, there was that connection to a degree. But I kind of threw that out the window for here. I really wanted to confuse people. I wanted to kind of take them away out of normality of life, I guess, and put them into a different setting. And playing with absurdity with these purple and pink color tones, and with these kind of dull and less inviting spaces, but it sometimes can be calm and can be still. And that was, of course, shown here, so some install shots of the show here. Yeah, and I added to the presentation of the install with some colored lights. I put some red cellophane over these LEDs, and they like made this really nice light pink tone that I placed near some of the dollar images to kind of wall round the viewing experience from the rest of the prints. And I thought it was very effective, and it was definitely something I was happy with how it turned out. And it was noted for this upcoming work, which I guess I'll get into right now, and how I plan to show it in a couple weeks here. So one artist that has been in my mind a lot lately and has been kind of almost too influential to a degree is Stefan Haney, and I'm not too sure how to pronounce his last name, but he's a German photographer, and he's kind of the leader of this new movement there called the New German Abstraction, where he's playing with simple, minimalist photographs that really just elicit emotion and color, but also question whether it's digital render or an actual photograph. His whole kind of theory behind that is everyone can take a photograph now, so it's even harder to believe what's truer. Things can just be digital. So he's taking these images as a digital photograph and presenting them to, I guess, confuse the viewer, but also say so much with, I suppose, so little. And I had an interesting experience working with him. So I was looking at his work, and I was trying to bring that into my own practice. But it was getting to the point where I was almost reproducing images that looked exactly like his, and it was getting kind of uncomfortable in a way. I looked at my phone one day to look at his Instagram account, and like this bottom left image was almost identical to one of his, and it made me feel kind of strange. I felt like I actually wasn't progressing, even though I was looking at new influences and being influenced by him. So that was kind of a roadblock for me working on this project here. The next person I wanted to show that would help me kind of get out of that would be Jessica Eden, and she is a fantastic photographer, incredibly talented technically and visually. She's from Regina actually, but I think she's based in Montreal currently. And she takes all these images on 4x5 film and uses the subtractive color system to create these beautiful, almost painting-like photographs where she's painting these cubes and then photographing the cubes and photographing the different shapes and presenting them in a beautiful, beautiful way. And I mean, this is something that I've always aspired to create, but it's definitely one of those bodies of work where I get envious looking at it to a degree because it's just so grand and so technically sound. But that being said, I was interested in her use of the subtractive color system. And so I guess I'll show you what the work will look like for my show here right now. So this series is called Plus and Minus, and the series is looking at the additive color system and the subtractive one, and how they kind of interplay with one another, and how they can be played with one another. There's actually an image missing here, unfortunately. But I specifically found fulfillment in this work because the images are yet again doubled. The top portion of each image is actually the same as the bottom. And so I'm playing with this manipulation of space and this manipulation of object actually, because the middle light, the middle color is actually just a lamp that I've fixated upon for hours and hours, how I could properly photograph it, how I could properly use it for this image. And I went to the first three things that I talked about earlier today, which was shape, color, and abstraction, and how I can implement that into the work. So as soon as I found that circle, I found that shape, it started connecting. Shape, how can I use the colors? I'll use the additive and subtractive systems to create, and then obviously the abstraction is in the image. They're these very minimal, painterly-like images that I'm going to be printing 40 by 40 inches and hanging 3 to 4 of them in the gallery here. I also have a projection that will have the images actually being videotaped as the colors move with one another, and that projection will be installed on a loop, moving. So when you walk into the space, it almost feel like this meditative like aura and this color coming through the space. I guess that's the poster. So it's Plus and Minus. Reception is April 6th at 7 p.m. here. And yeah, I mean that's essentially where I'm at this point. The installation for the show is still being worked on, as they always are at this point. But more or less, I'm really excited about these images, and I think it kind of took me to a degree to going from hell and back again to kind of get this work, as I was creatively stumped when I was really trying to emulate this guy and how I could get to him. But I guess I'll end it there, and I'll allow for questions. Yeah.
Okay, back one image. So there's something crossing the center there.
Yes.
What is that?
So that is actually the very bottom of the light. So the light is this kind of cone, and you're getting this little ray at the bottom.
Because it's a doubled image.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Two images.
I prefer to leave that in because it adds some humanity to it to a degree, where it's not totally just a shape. It has a little bit of imperfection actually, which I think is important to let the viewer make a connection once information is given. I think. Yeah.
It also shows a little bit of the artist's hand.
Yeah.
And a little bit of your process.
Definitely. I mean, you can see that in other works too, for sure. Where there's little hints and almost codes you can find to see where it was taken or how it was made, whereas in a sense they're completely obtuse in other ways.
Well, it made me think of Robert Irwin, who did a series of plexiglass pieces, and there was I don't know, you probably don't know this work, but
Not
you
familiar,
should look, you definitely have to look this up, because it's really uncanny, that subtle reference that you didn't even know about, which I think is really great.
No idea.
Robert Irwin.
Robert
and
Irwin.
It's plexiglass stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Noted.
Discs.
Discs. Okay. Great.
There's an optic thing happening for me when I'm looking at your work, where things are moving back and forth.
Yeah.
Which I find rather exciting that you're playing with that with your process.
I kind of like that aura feel. I think I've actually had some success with that in the past, so I wanted to expand upon that. And I think the video projection, almost a physical aura of sorts, I think will lend to the work.
Yeah. Have you looked at James Turrell's work too?
Yeah, I didn't mention him in the slide, but he's like the other, like he's my number one, and I love him. In a photographic sense, I think it's interesting how he just uses light as just a medium,
Yeah.
and all of our documentation of it is what we love, you know. But going to it is something completely different.
That's right.
And so he really is quite brilliant. I don't know if I'm quite getting there,
Well,
but
actually, I was feeling that, that's why I brought it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Interesting
like
reference.
looking up
Yeah.
into the sky space, but that line at the center is kind of unsettling because we wouldn't see a line in the sky. like
No,
that.
it's imperfect, right?
Just curious about I know you have a fascination with spring breakers because we've talked about it in class a number of times
Yeah.
and everything like that. So I'm just wondering, do you ever think about like putting back in images with those fantastic neon backgrounds? Like putting in, sometimes you have a lot of pictures of light standards and a lot of pictures of colors of buildings and stuff like that. So what about, have you ever integrated subjects back into your...
Like the physical subject?
Yeah.
That's what I find interesting about this, because the light actually is the physical subject in the middle.
This has a subject.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about like integrating what you like the best about that. Just they're so separate, but yet you love that so much. So
I think it all comes down to, in terms of why I love that film a lot, is the colors, and I have to kind of figure out why I like the colors so much. And I think at the end of the day, I think I just enjoyed color theory a lot. And so I studied that to a degree, and in terms of Spring Breakers, like this series, like with the 4 pink ones, was really influenced by that. And I really wanted to emulate certain colors that were stripped right from there. I literally took a still and did the color drop tool from Photoshop to get one for the one on the left there, middle left. And so I guess in a way I would love to go back to it, but I'm trying to expand upon things. I will say, earlier in the year, I hate to circle you out, but I showed some work in progress, and you really made a comment that stuck with me, saying that like, you should get out of your comfort zone, Kyle. You should do something a little different. You should, breathe some more life into it. And I was just like,
something like that.
and I don't know necessarily if I really went far out of my comfort zone, but I definitely challenged myself to do something different. But at the same time, I believe that photography is just light and time, and I want to strip it down to its farthest abilities. And I think what's always interesting is as soon as you introduce color, it is kind of this inclusion or an interruption. And what does that result? Where can we go from there? What is interesting about that, or what's not interesting about it? Like what's in between? And that's really what I'm studying with this series. There's 2 more images. I just didn't want to leak them all.
Can you explain what you meant by the additive and subtractive?
Yeah, so for instance, I should have put a little slide in on here. So additive light is using red, blue, and green, and then when you're mixing them together, and then subtractive light is using CMYK color. So on the left here is RGB, which is the additive system. So this piece is called green on red, because when you put green onto red, you get yellow. And then on the right, this piece is called yellow on magenta, because when you get yellow on magenta, you get a blue.
So you've been working, because like I noticed too it was further back with the street lamps in your Coding Dream series.
Yeah.
That was really pink. So you manipulate the color.
Yes, I manipulate the color, but for these are all just using LED lights that have been preset to different colors. So there's no actual, other than contrast and some saturation adjustments, there's no actual color swapping digitally. Yeah.
Your work is a really interesting mix of things. And it's interesting, first of all, if I look at this and without hearing you or understanding anything, I'd have no idea that this was photography, for example.
I kind of thrive off that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of your work sort of finds a really kind of an interesting edge between, what did you say photography was before? Light and time?
Yeah.
But it's also what is there in front of the camera, in front of the lens, right?
Yeah.
That's how people talk about the camera being so radical a break in image making, historical image making, right? Because it's mechanically reproduced or now digitally, right? But essentially the same thing. And so, the lines that you have in the middles of the spheres there, that's a register of what was there in front of the lens, right? And you can talk about it perhaps in, I've heard you talk about I've read things that you've written, about your work where you're talking about the emotion of the work. But that's not at all what your work seems like to me at all. I mean,
Okay.
it seems much closer at first to sort of a very heady kind of a pop sensibility. And in these, I think Elizabeth was right, it's op. Right? You're talking about perception here and an opticality, right? And some of the other images, you know, if you're looking at them, they're kind of sort of buzzing and your eyes can't really handle them completely, right? So it's not working on a gut level at all. Your work is really very kind of heady, I think. And I like the edge that it's coming to between a kind of a purely kind of hard edge abstraction, but the thing was there and leaving some evidence of it actually being a photograph. Like there's one photograph that you showed like 2 or 3 times there, right? The one that was reversed, but it's actually a photograph of some kind of corner or something, right? And at first you really don't know what you're looking at, but there's just one plane where you get it. Okay, that was like a real thing in front of me, right? And that edge, I think, is really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of what Barb was talking about, that it kind of puts the artist in the work as well. It allows it to have myself breathe into the images rather than it only be a sphere on a square. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But there is something though, like looking at the blue one at the very top, there's something painterly about your photographs. You know, they're you know, like if I didn't know if it was a photograph, I would swear it was a painting because it's imperfect.
That's right.
You know.
Thanks. That's the goal.
So will you choose the color and the shape of your photography? Have you ever thinking about playing with the symbology of it? Because I think one of your references, the neon demon.
Yeah.
There's tons of subtle occult symbolism in the film. And I was thinking, especially doing that scene where she was on runway, from our point of view, it's the blue and blue halo on the dark background. But from her point of view, it's become this deep red suppressing crimson. So
and it's like terrifying.
I was wondering if you were thinking about playing with the idea of how to manipulate it furthermore to add symbolism.
To add symbolism.
Yeah,
I would
with the shape
definitely.
and the color choice.
I would definitely like to. I think I don't have any symbolism in particular in mind for this series, but I think that's important to let work grow and let work kind of breathe a bit more into different perspectives, like you're talking about, how that, you know, the symbolism behind that film and the visuals. I think that's important, and I think that was something I would like to incorporate. That's maybe an aspect I lack in though, but that I would like to, yeah.
There's something I see like very, I don't know whether other people can see or not because I have like very thick glasses. So when I look at the blue and magenta, I sort of see like there's a line around the, like a black line around the blue circle. And then if I move, it will like, the line will come like to the bottom, and then if I look like this, it goes to the top. If I turn to the right, it's like, it shows on the left, and then it just like keep changing around as long as I can move around. It's very interesting.
No, that's great. That's something I really like kind of strive for. Like I like that each viewer kind of gets a different experience, because I mean everyone's eyes are different. Everyone sees colors differently, and I think that is helpful in my work. Everyone's going to view these images slightly differently. Will have a different experience, or I would at least hope they would. Yeah.
Have you ever thought of using like an actual sphere to light up and photograph?
Yeah.
Like then to start going into the 3D, more like Jessica Eaton is doing?
Yeah, I would
Because these are
definitely
very,
like to.
it's very two-dimensional, except for when I look on your screen from this distance,
There's a bit more.
I can see more
Yeah.
3D. kind
Yeah,
of going
no,
on.
I think that would be a nice step in the right direction for sure. Constructing images, like
Do
constructing
the photograph
actual.
an orb.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I'd like even go back to squares. That's exactly kind of Jessica Eaton, but you know.
Yeah.
But there's always room for yourself to grow. I think there's homage and inspiration can be taken in so many different directions. And I had a bit of a eureka moment, so to speak, when I kind of came to this work, because I was really incorporating Stefan's work as well as Jessica's, but still putting my own spin on it, I believe.
I love that you're always pushing, it seems to me you're always pushing boundaries with your process and turning things on its head all the time. And I think, and it's good sometimes to hit, those stumbling blocks, because then that forces your hand even more.
Totally.
So I don't know, I'm excited by what you're doing, so I
Oh,
just want to let you know.
thanks. I appreciate that. I'm always kind of in competition with myself. Like, how can I do the next thing greater, bigger? But at the same time, I'm always trying to strip it down, like, smaller and smaller. So it's not necessarily a struggle, but I have struggled at times. And thank you for saying that. It's nice.
Kyle, are these images at the studio?
There's one, yeah. I'll show you.
Are you coming tonight?
No, but I'll be there tomorrow.
All day?
I'll be there.
Oh my God, we have to talk.
Okay, great.
So glad I came.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so, but you guys can all come here April 6th at 7 p.m. and you can see in real life, and you can hang out and have a drink and chat. Yeah.
This isn't a question but a comment, and I was just going to compliment you on your first artist presentation. You've done a very good job, and you were very articulate about your ideas and your sources and the way that your work has evolved this far. You
Thank you.
didn't seem nervous, and so good job.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Allison, I
Great.
totally
Good
second
job.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other comments or anything? Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Marie. Thanks for coming.